Welcome back to Milking Stool Ministries. This week was supposed to be our last week, but in fact, I have split John chapter 20 and 21 into 2 weeks because there's too much goodness, there's too much truth, and there's too much excitement in them. So we're going to do 20 this week. I'm going to jump right into it, and then 21 next week, and I will jump right into that as well as conclude John, the book of John. So, chapter 20, we're going to go through the chronology of events here. I'm going to beg you to please pause the video now and reread the chapter so that when we're going through this, it's totally fresh in your mind, because John chapter 20 is an awesome chapter. Right away in verse 1, it sets off with an amazing, just exciting tone. It says that early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb. I think that the while it was still dark is important. I think this is a moment in which we can feel as though we're identified with in those early morning stressors, when you had a test in college or you have a big presentation at work or, their doctor's appointment. Something's coming. You're about to find something out and you're nervous about it. You're anxious. You're worried. For Mary, I'm sure she was concerned about what was going to happen with Jesus's body. Jewish tradition is very rich in how it wants you to go about burial. There's a lot of sort of procedures and traditions there, and so I'm sure that she was concerned for what was going to happen with Jesus's body. Aside from that, her God just died in front of her eyes. So she gets up before it's light out and wanders out to the tomb, and sure enough, it's empty. The rock has been moved aside. So she goes running back. I don't think that women were runners back then like we are now. And so I just imagine this woman in her full, floor-length robes running to tell the disciples, like, oh my gosh, the stone's been moved. Like, what happened? So then, of course, the disciples she relays information. The disciples run back with her. The running here displays urgency. It displays concern. It displays care. I think that this is a point at which Peter and the other disciples, despite what they may have done wrong previous to Christ's death, are now showing that they deeply care because his dead body is missing and they want to do the right thing in burying it. So that's awesome. They get there and, they find that his body is gone. They don't know where he is. Verse 9 is just really what, touched me, really what convicted me and challenged me. It says, they still did not understand from Scripture that Jesus had to rise from the dead. I think this should be an encouragement to all of us, realizing that these were the disciples. These people saw Jesus in real life, talked to Jesus in real life, and they still didn't get it. They still didn't understand what was happening. I think that we say hindsight's 20/20, and I believe that it is, but I also believe that experiencing things is how we learn, how some of us learn, how I learn. And so they hadn't had the experience. They knew what the Old Testament said, and they just weren't there yet. As far as their faith and their understanding. And so we're allowed to not be there yet either, because it's okay, because the real OGs of the Bible didn't know either, or struggled to know as well. I think that our flesh is predisposed to want to know everything, to want to understand everything, and that's where faith can be a little bit frustrating, because it's not black and white, it's not easy to understand, it's not 100% explainable. That's just what faith is. And so just knowing, there's this comfort in knowing that was how it was for other people. And later in the chapter, we see Thomas. Do y'all know where Doubting Thomas came from? Yeah. Thomas say in verse 25, unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand onto his side, I will not believe. Doubting Thomas, hello. I think that God has an amazing sense of humor, because obviously I married a Thomas, and I am the queen of doubting. I like to ask questions. I like to know what's going on. Faith has been a challenge for me all my life because I can't explain it all, and that frustrates me. So Thomas is here. He's doubting, and Christ takes him hand on and says, put your finger here, see my sides. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe. I'm working on that right now, but just having like that concise sort of command sort of placed so obviously in scripture just really was helpful. I think with everything going on in the world and in the US right now, it's hard to not doubt. It's hard to not wonder, where's the plan? Where's the glory? God, why aren't you stepping up here? And I realized that I need to just silence some of those doubts and those questions and believe and practice being faithful and trusting in the plan, even if it looks ugly. And it does. I know it does. The own plan in my life, the own plan of my life, has some ugly in it, as y'all know. And somehow I'm just trying to be really trusting that God is faithful in that, and that ugly is going to bring something beautiful. Plants do grow out of manure, And so that just, I'm really trying not to create conditions. I'm trying not to establish hoops in which or through which Christ and God have to jump. As seen here, he will jump through them. They will jump through them. But I would love to just be one of those people with that childlike faith that's talked about in the Bible. So I just really, really rich. The verse of the week actually is going to randomly be thrown back into the middle of it. But verse 20, after he said this, he being Jesus, he showed them his hands and side. The disciples were overjoyed when they saw him. I just imagine being at a reverse surprise party where all the guests are there and they don't even realize they're at a surprise party until surprise. And then what that would be like. I have been at a couple surprise parties. I've never had one thrown for me. But if the one person who's being surprised can sort of light up the room with their excitement and their shock, I can only imagine what it would be like the other way around. So I just, that overjoyed, y'all know how I feel about joy. That overjoyed really did something for me, and it's something I really want to focus on this week, is just being overjoyed in the little things that God's doing, the big things that God's doing. Trying to find joy, because right now things feel dark and heavy, and so let's seek joy. Let's seek being joyful, and let's stop doubting and believe, which easier said than done. Okay, see y'all next week for the real last week of Milking Soul Ministries study through John.